On Cinema at the Cinema is a show starring Tim Heidecker and Gregg Turkington playing fictional versions of themselves. In the show, they review movies and make recommendations, but really the show has nothing to do with movies at all. Instead, the show is a framing device used to explore these fictional characters. The show draws you in with its mundane premise and then gradually goes completely off the rails, involving massive storylines that take years to pay off. Ego, jealousy, revenge, murder, Stockholm Syndrome, autism, abandonment, companionship, and depression are just a few of the themes executed brilliantly throughout the show's unsuspectingly massive saga.
I was at the 6th Street Bridge and was going to jump, and a police officer showed up and grabbed
Sounds like It's a Wonderful Life with James Stewart, 1939.
Here's the worst part about On Cinema at the Cinema. It's almost impossible to recommend to people because vital character development spans so many years, and there are so many inside jokes, it can feel impenetrable at times if you don't start from the beginning.
May I ask you again, Mr. Meyer, where does the plot of Star Trek IV take place? What city?
At the same time, I would also say that the show is not necessarily very bingeable. My first time watching the series, I watched a 12-hour supercut of the first 8 seasons, and I think a lot of the jokes flew over my head because they all started to blend together as part of the same shtick. When they're one after another, at a certain point you just want to skip it all and just get to the vital plot information. On a more recent rewatch, I tried watching only an episode or 2 per day, and I have to say this vastly improves the experience because it allows the jokes to land more often and keeps the format feeling fresh. And it highlights how much of the movie review talk contains some of the funniest bits.
So thanks to Peter Lepinidis for making this movie, and I didn't realize it was an animated movie. You know, so the technology is
pretty
getting
clear
I know,
about
but I'm saying
1
the
second in.
Sometimes you have to admit, though, the technology now is so good that some of these animated movies look like real life.
Some of them do, but when a squirrel starts talking, you generally know it's an animated picture.
Right.
All this is to say, I really wanted to make a video recommending the On Cinema universe, but for a long time, I wasn't sure how to go about it. Half the video would probably be just explaining major plot points, and in my opinion, the best part of the show is when a new nugget of plot information or character development is revealed out of the blue. Robotically listing out a series of plot points in a review doesn't effectively convey what made each of those individual revelations so great in those moments. So I hope that I was able to provide you with a taste of what the tone of On Cinema feels like in a smaller package with this tier list advent calendar project.
He said that he didn't really want me to stay over anymore, which is kind of a bummer, so hopefully if I find the cat, he'll change his mind.
I would still like to talk about some aspects of On Cinema though, so I thought it could be fun to make one final tier list comparing all the renditions of Empty Bottle, which is a song created by Dekkar, the fictional band created by the fictional version of Tim Heidecker. There have been tons of different versions of this song throughout the series, and I think it's a great vertical slice of the show that shines a light into some of the character development and thematic tones you can expect, without outright spoiling those amazing moments for people interested in watching for themselves.
This is called Empty Bottle.
I had an interesting weekend too, and I wanted
Hold
to
on.
talk to you.
I am in the middle of a sentence, and you interrupted me twice now.
The very first appearance of Empty Bottle was actually pretty late in the series, all the way in season 7. So there was already quite a lot going on at that point. Season 7 in general is by far my favorite season because it marks the point where a bunch of smaller plot elements and characters come together, and things really start paying off. I'm going to try to keep my discussion centered around Empty Bottle just to keep some of those crazier revelations a secret, but just know that Season 7 is definitely when the show starts to come into its own. Here, Tim debuts the song for Gregg and the On Cinema audience.
I'm like a broken lantern, stuffed with everything good and light. Hang around waiting for something to pick me up or hang me dry. Fill me up again.
This will be one of my only chances in this tier list video to talk about Gregg, since he wants pretty much nothing to do with Empty Bottle or Dekkar.
I was the movie expert, and he was becoming really not important to the show anymore. And actually a hindrance, because he would talk about these other things, like this band that no one There's no fans of DKR or Dekkar. Zero fans. Nobody likes it.
Gregg is probably the best character on the entire show, in part because you don't even realize he's playing a character until about 100 episodes in. He has this autistic fixation with movies, because if it's not a movie, it's a waste of time. And more than that, he needs to be the expert of those movies.
And Al Pacino.
Al Pacino.
From? You don't even know that.
Godfather.
And?
Scarface.
And?
Scent of a Woman.
And?
He's
made about 50 movies, so you should be able to come up with more than 2.
If he's wrong about a random fact, he'll go to extreme lengths to dig in and justify his position. You're wrong, and he's right. He has to be right because this is his thing. If he's not the #1 movie expert, he's nobody.
There's not even a Best Actor and Actress nominated for West Side Story. So how are they going to win 10 major awards? And are you just full of shit?
You're talking to some idiots, basically, because they're following exactly what happened in 1962 tonight. It's called Oscar symmetry.
They're not doing any of that. Can we get an update on Oscar?
Well, look what won for
did
best.
Any West Side Story Oscars
but like Dune won for like best science fiction movie. Well, of course, West Side Story is not going to win best science fiction movie.
There's no category for best science fiction movie. What is this? Troy from Coda won.
For best supporting actor.
What is going on
Oscar
here?
Symmetry.
Why do I bring you here if you're not going to give it to me straight?
Because I actually have been providing your audience who are completely disgusted with Dekkar, and I'm getting all these messages from people that are saying, why is there going to be Dekkar? Put the bat down.
Who knows if the character went through some sort of trauma as a kid or if he's just always been like this, but it makes for one of the best comedy performances in human history, and I'm not saying that lightly. It all feels so effortlessly real. And the fact that many of his famous lines are improvised is a testament to his quick wit and total understanding of this fictional version of himself.
Listen, Greg, you bring in tapes all the time to the studio for different popcorn classics. Maybe that one got left in.
I love this movie, but this is not a popcorn classic. It's a different type of thing.
It is a popcorn classic.
It's a great movie.
It's a great
movie, but it's not a popcorn classic.
I think the moment I truly became the fan of the show was when I realized that the whole time, Tim was actually the normal one. Obviously, Gregg hates Empty Bottle because it's not a movie or from a movie soundtrack. But the question is the audience supposed to hate it? I think on a first listen, it definitely is a bit grating. In real life, Tim is a pretty decent singer, but in Empty Bottle, his singing is a bit flat, and the guitar riffs and solos feel intentionally amateurish, as if this is just the kind of thing you're supposed to put in a rock song. Real life Tim actually writes songs from time to time, so to me this is a pretty good attempt at a real life skilled musician pretending to be an amateur creating a basic rock song. The lyrics also feel intentionally by the number, although when you actually think about what he's saying, the song really is quite dark and depressing. Pair it with the I'm a Badass music video, and you've got a kind of sad clown thing going on. The music video features a new character, Tim's bandmate Axiom, introduced as someone he met at the Guitar Center. Axiom is interesting because he really does come off like some guy they found on the street. He ends up playing a much larger role, though, and becomes a bit of an antagonist to Gregg early on, because, hey, anyone who diverts attention away from movie discussion is not a person you want around. The music video helps to better establish Axiom as a permanent member of the cast, and also features some footage from Tim's other fictional project, Dekkar, which is a type of secret agent spy TV show. I'm not a fan of Dekkar at all, and I'll get into that later, but I think the footage fits well with the tone of the video, and it was a good choice to include it. Overall, even though the song is supposed to be mediocre, after you've heard it a few times, it can be kind of catchy, particularly the chorus. I'd still never put this rendition on my iPod, but it's solid. I'll give it a B. The next time we hear a brand new rendition of Empty Bottle is during the 4th On Cinema Oscar special. The Oscar specials are a fully live, 3-hour improvisational show that goes on during the actual Oscars. This type of long-form, live improv is totally unique to On Cinema, and it's one of the best things they do. Not only are they filled with hilarious bits and plot payoffs, but they play a very important expositional role. Because the whole premise of the show is that you're meant to be confined to this cinema set, it can be very hard to write stories that stay in that space. Compare this to a show like The Office. Most scenes are at the office, and in order for the internal logic of the documentary crew to make sense, they can't film scenes at, say, Stanley's house whenever they want. So they have to engineer reasons to get out of the office, like a convention or a fun run or whatever. With On Cinema, there are times when they clearly want to show you something, but more often than not, they have to infer it through an offhand remark or a news story or a location segment. These Oscar specials allow larger ideas to play out naturally. More importantly, they create a situation where Tim does not have complete creative control. Generally, in the logic of the show, fictional Tim is the one editing and uploading these episodes. So if something bad happens to him on the show, his character would just cut it from the video. This isn't the case with the Oscar specials. Because they're live, surprises can happen, and Tim is powerless to stop them. This allows major revelations about his character to come out that we wouldn't see otherwise. This second rendition of Empty Bottle is another such moment. There's no story reason for Tim to ever have a live band on the movie review show, although I guess there's nothing stopping him. This version is an acoustic cover of the song, and again, it comes off a bit amateur. Funnily enough, the Oscar medley song they played earlier in the special was genuinely great.
I believe there's a Martian sitting on top of the world. I believe there's a Martian sitting on top of the world.
I mean, you can tell they're clearly capable, but they're just intentionally dumbing it down with this Empty Bottle here. Interestingly, he's chosen to use a 12-string guitar for this set, which is actually quite difficult in my opinion. Like, I've tried a mandolin, and the strings are hard as hell, and your fingers are in pain after about 3 minutes. So I wonder why he chose a more difficult type of guitar to play here, especially when he doesn't even seem to be taking advantage of the double strings. Maybe that's part of the joke. The solo at the end is particularly hilarious for me. I used to jam with some friends of mine when I was younger, and these are the exact type of crappy solos I would play. You can see how the camera switcher keeps cutting away to this guy. This is Manuel, and he was introduced in this Oscar special. I genuinely believe they intended to hire this guy as a musician for one night, but they liked him so much, they made him into a full-fledged character. Every time something crazy happens in this Oscar special, the camera keeps randomly cutting away to Manuel's reaction, a character the audience has never met before. It makes no sense, but he becomes quite likable next to this camera switcher behind the scenes. Every time you see him, he's always cracking up or looking bewildered or captivated by some bizarre Gregg segment.
I want to talk about the elephant in the room. It's been 6 weeks. What's that song, dude? You know it. 1 week since it's been Bare Naked Ladies. No, but it's been a tough couple of months, 6 months or so since we lost the little TCJR, Tom Cruise Jr. And thank God for all your sympathies and everything that you guys sent my way. It's really incredible.
Even though he's basically just a prop most of the time because he barely speaks English, in a way he's one of the best characters because he's a fish out of water who helps bridge the gap between the viewer and these weird characters. It's just a great, natural performance that helps to ground everything. And because he's an Italian with very little English ability, you can justify him continuing to hang out around these people because, I don't know, this is just how Americans are, right?
I need you to come down here. Don't do that. Don't do that again.
The Joker strikes again. The Joker strikes again.
You do that again, I'm going to come over there and physically assault you.
Anyway, this version of Empty Bottle is fine enough, but it does little to advance the plot other than establishing Manuel as a likable, talented guy. The next version is the EDM dance version. If the fact this even exists is surprising to you, I'll keep the details relatively light here. Just know that this version of the song is part of some of the biggest and best plot lines the On Cinema universe has ever had, culminating in the trial of the century. The song itself is probably my least favorite of all the renditions, though. I generally enjoy EDM, but this isn't for me. The second half in particular reminds me of those crappy raves I was dragged to in college that permanently damaged my hearing. Even though I don't like it, I will say this version has gotten more mileage than any other version just because of its versatility as a song for a scene where the characters are at a party. My favorite use of it has to be during the 7th Oscar special. I'm not going to spoil how they used it, but it was something I've never seen before in any show and a total stroke of genius. For that reason, I'll have to give it a B, even though the song itself is like a D. The next time we see Empty Bottle is in an episode of Dekkar, that spy show I mentioned earlier. Dekkar is actually a completely separate show on Adult Swim, but the characters in the show are actually playing the fictionalized versions of themselves from On Cinema, who are then acting in Dekkar. Going back to The Office, think of something like Threat Level Midnight, where there's a second layer of acting going on. That's exactly what Dekkar is, but it's a full show with like 6 seasons. The fact that this show even exists is completely insane because anyone who watches it without the context of the On Cinema universe will be completely baffled that this piece of crap made it to air. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a fan of Dekkar, although I think the premise of a show within a show is great.
I should just resign and make you president.
I would recommend this.
My main problem is really just that the production quality can be distractingly bad, especially in the first 2 seasons. Tim's On Cinema character is the one writing, editing, and directing these episodes, so it makes logical sense that everything is low quality because that's the kind of show that character would make. But if you make too many of these elements terrible, at some point the viewers are just torturing themselves by watching. Dekkar is lampooning way too many different aspects of a film production at the same time, and it's just a mess. Going back to Threat Level Midnight. In the context of the show, the premise and writing are out there, the acting is amateur, but everything else about the production is acceptable. It isn't prestige quality, but it doesn't distract you.
I was chatting with BJ about Threat Level Midnight, and he said that there was a huge debate about whether or not Michael's movie should be shot well or not well. And he's told me that Paul Lieberstein, who was the showrunner at the time, was very adamant that it should look better than you expect, not worse than you expect. And the reason for that was Paul just said it'll be more fun to watch. We don't need the joke to be like that Michael cut off someone's head.
Or like the camera's like shaky.
Exactly.
Even something like The Room, which is considered one of the best so bad it's good movies of all time, had a certain level of competence to it. There were people who worked on that production who were able to contribute some level of professional expertise and make it watchable. You know, the lighting is fine, the shot compositions are fine, the actors, they're earning a paycheck, they're trying to make the material work. Look at this green screen shot, right? It's pretty well done. It's not bad. It's the directorial decisions, right? It's the writing. It's the fact that all these normal people are fawning over this clearly weird guy. That's what makes the project work so well.
What a story, Mark.
Tim himself actually tried to collaborate with The Room's creator, Tommy Wiseau, but it didn't work out.
We've met with him several times after working with him about doing something together, and it would always get weird, and we don't want to have any, we want to like disturbing a tribe in the Amazon. I don't want to have any influence. I don't want to try to replicate what you do, but I also don't want to assist you to make it better. But I also understand his desire to why can't we just have the best people working on this? But then it just becomes like anything else.
It seems like Tim still has that urge to make a so bad it's good product though. And I think Dekkar is his attempt at that. But for me, it's just bad. Later seasons of Dekkar are slightly better because they do try to rein in some of those intentional errors, but it's still way too much. Going back to Empty Bottle and putting my thoughts on Dekkar aside, I think this version of the song is okay. Like most aspects of Dekkar, it's an intentionally bad version of a good idea. Tim's singing is worse than ever, and some of the instruments can feel out of sync with each other.
I'm like an empty bottle, drained of left in my mind. Checking out life on the dark side, riding down the road to the end of time.
Dekkar, you rock, man.
If you ignore that, it's a nice enough rendition, but all things considered, I have to give it a D. It's just another scene in Dekkar and doesn't really bring anything new in terms of plot progress, beyond the idea that Tim is seemingly trying to make a version of Empty Bottle for every possible music genre. Next, we come to Quick on May, the version of Empty Bottle played at the trial of Tim Heidecker. The trial is the most incredible work of art these guys have done in their careers, and I mean that for every person involved. It may be one of my favorite pieces of any media ever. It's the ultimate slow burn payoff to the slowest burning show ever. It's a chance to bring back old characters and remind the audience of all the crazy stuff that's happened. It's a way to tie up loose ends and pay off long-running gags, while still planting seeds for the future and creating opportunities for new characters to shine. Most significantly, despite being such a major climactic moment in the series, the trial is actually a really great way for new people to get into the show, because trials are naturally very expositional. Just like in a real trial, the lawyers asking questions are leading the jury through what happened, and we, the viewers, are being led with them. As with the Oscar specials, this new framing device of the trial is a great way to reveal plot points that couldn't normally be revealed through the natural progression of the review show. One of the most notable of these is actually when Axiom takes the stand. We learn way more about his relationship with Tim in these few minutes than we have in several years. First, we learn that Tim pays him a stipend, and not like a, hey Ax, here's your cut of the money for this gig thing, but more of like a, hang out with me and I'll give you some money type of thing. We also learn through the playing of Quick on May that Axiom actually wrote Empty Bottle as an Italian song with different lyrics many years ago, repurposed the melody, and gave it to Tim, thus implying that Tim can't even write a song like Empty Bottle. Worse still, they play both versions back to back in court, and Axiom's version sounds better. The whole thing feels like a hatchet job designed to make Tim's character come off as pathetic, which is great for us, the viewers, but doesn't really fit in a murder trial. I assume the prosecution's reasoning for putting Axiom on the stand and playing this song is to help establish Tim as a bad person by saying that he's lying to people about who wrote the song, that the people Tim surrounds himself with are also bad because they're willing to lie to protect him. But honestly, this whole argument came off as pretty weak to me. The song is basically not relevant to the charges at all. Some famous artists ghostwrite all the time, and they're not getting heat in court for it. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but I really didn't see the prosecution's argument here, and if anything, I think it hurt the prosecution for focusing on such a small nitpick, while 10 feet away, there's a corkboard covered with pictures of dead kids. You don't need Axiom. Just seeing how Tim behaves in court is enough to determine his character.
Were you ever physically abused by Mr. Heidecker?
Objection.
Overruled.
Watch it, Mark.
I guess the prosecution wouldn't have known that when prepping their case, but still. Axiom's inclusion is not for the prosecution. It's for us, the viewers. It gives the viewers a chance to uncover some of those mysteries behind Axiom's brotherhood with Tim, and recontextualizes a lot of those appearances where apparently Tim was paying him to be there. Overall, I think B is a deserved placement here. It's a great version of the song, intentionally so, but as part of the trial, the greatest project Tim's team has ever been a part of, it's one of the least believable moments. This next rendition of Empty Bottle at the 6th Oscar special is less of a musical performance and more of a display of dominance. Through a series of events, Gregg had taken over the Oscar special completely, and Tim hadn't even been invited. But just like Steven Spielberg predicted, Tim finds a way, and bursts into the studio with weapons and alcohol. He gradually takes over the entire event, finds another creative way to lay waste to the film archives, and replaces Gregg's Thanes of the Shire with his own band. After all that, this drunken rendition of Empty Bottle is nothing more than the final nail in the coffin for Gregg's Oscar night.
Okay, but
All right.
As a song, it's an unhinged, drunken mess, but as a plot device, it's hilarious and memorable. So for that, I'll bump it up to a C. Before we continue, it's briefly worth noting that this is our first major appearance of Michael Matthews, also known as Larue.
Thank God for Dekkar. Say that.
Thank God for Dekkar.
After Dr. Sand parted ways with the show, it felt like they were looking for some sort of antagonistic figure to fill Dr. Sand's lofty shoes. Larue seems like he might fit the bill as he introduces himself with a gun and a promise that all the Hollywood celebrities will be raided and killed at 7:10 p.m., courtesy of QAnon. Naturally, he receives some negative feedback from the other people at the event.
You're sitting on a stage with a
Joe?
guy that's got a gun on his side and a knife, and it's very, very uncomfortable, and we just hope that everything's going to be okay with you.
Yeah, I know that, Joe. You've said that many times.
We'll have to see if Larue lives up to his threatening image. The next new rendition of Empty Bottle was during the On Cinema live event in Atlanta, Georgia. This was a weird one-off event where Tim and Gregg did some movie reviews live, a few skits, and then had a Dekkar concert. It seemed like an amazing event, and it's the first time I've ever thought, boy, I wish I could live closer to Georgia. The actual Empty Bottle performance is almost perfect. It brings up an interesting issue that I think real-life Tim, Axiom, and Manuel really need to be on the same page about, and that's when to play a song seriously and when to play it, quote-unquote, in character. The song starts off great, and the guitars sound great too. I especially can't stress how good that 12-string guitar that Tim is playing sounds.
Checking out that light on the dark side, riding down the road till the end of time.
It turns out he actually can play it, and the sound is so full and layered. Manuel sounds great too, and Axiom unfortunately can't play along due to plot reasons, but he's doing well on rhythm. Tim even starts getting a little goofy with some guitar tapping, clearly meant to mimic the style of videos like this. And even if Tim doesn't hit that level, it still sounds good. Even when he's singing, he's being kind of goofy with his cadence, but it still sounds pretty legit. He's riding the line well. It would seem as if there's finally going to be a recording of Empty Bottle I can add to a playlist. Then Tim starts the solo section. It's as if halfway through doing his solo, he realizes, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be acting goofy. And he goes completely off the rails with this dissonant garbage and random plonking. He just couldn't help himself. But then, out of nowhere, Axiom. He absolutely pours his heart out to these fans and closes out the song with a genuinely great moment. I think Tim wasn't expecting this because he kind of breaks character and turns to Manuel and says, wow. You can see Tim sort of tries to finish the song on a good note after that moment. So what we have here is a communication error between real Tim and real Axiom. Or, if this is the way the song was meant to come out, it certainly feels like a mistake. See, if Tim is being goofy, Axiom can't go full try-hard like he did here, no matter how good it sounded. By doing this amazing belting, he comes off as not pretending and an actual struggling musician trying to blow up. Alternatively, Tim should match Axiom's try-hard energy and actually play a good solo, which I would overwhelmingly prefer. They played a really excellent rendition of the song up until the solo, and I think Tim taking it seriously all the way to the end and matching Axiom's enthusiasm would have propped all three of them up. We know real-life Tim wants to have some sort of music career, so I have no idea why he tanked the song for the lulz. I guess at a certain point, the performance of the song has to be in character, but Tim's character has been performing literally only Empty Bottle for like 4 years, so I think the character has earned the ability to perform a decent solo at this point. If you want to be an average band forever, or if you want to actually grow in skill, that's up to them, right? But they should agree on that tone ahead of time and be on the same page for the performances. And you know what? Maybe I'm reading too much into this moment. Maybe Tim was intending to put out a good solo, but he made a weird mistake by accident and just transitioned into goofiness like how someone makes falling down the stairs look good. Or, hey, maybe Axiom was meant to just sing his normal part there, and in the moment he decided to go all out because he was just feeling it. Hey, it's a live performance. Both of these are totally possible. The point is, it felt like a miscommunication. Still, I really loved the rendition overall, and it's probably the most listenable of all the renditions so far just because of how gorgeous the guitars sound, and of course Axiom's bit at the end is great too. We now come to Empty Bottle 3.0, and at this point I'm convinced that Tim really does want to make one version of Empty Bottle for every music genre. This one is a kind of Linkin Park inspired version, featuring a rap from Larue.
Our country's like an empty cup, waiting for the people to rise on up. Locking low while the bombs explode. Deep state coming for you down the road. Wave your flag, red, white, and blue. Use your mind like Roy Larue. Build the wall, just stand tall. Better not kneel before you throw the ball.
This is a great rendition of the song because it helps cement Larue as more than just a QAnon-worshipping gun-wielding maniac, but as a threat to Axiom and Manuel's status as Tim's right-hand men. They're clearly apprehensive about the direction the band is going, and perhaps even a little jealous of the new attention shown toward Larue. I really like this because it feels unexpected. Larue is developing into less of a villain like Dr. San and more of a rival for the Italians. As for the actual song itself, I know it's supposed to be a parody, but I kind of love it. The music video is perfect, the song is actually really catchy, and the bass hits hard, although I could never blast this from my sound system unironically. Still, that, combined with the heavy lifting the song does for the development of multiple characters, I'd have to give the song an S, something that I'm surprised about myself.
Gregg, anything on this?
I don't like it, but I didn't like the original either.
All right.
The next rendition debuted during the 8th Oscar special, and it's sung by superstar Wendy Kerby, who Tim discovered. Before I play her version of the song, I'd like to play this short clip, because I think it sums up Wendy Kerby's character pretty well.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus Christ, thank you so much for giving us Wendy Kerby. Thank you for showing us the way with her music and her voice and her talent and her pure white skin and the softness of her hand as I feel it right now. The softness reminds us of youth and the vitality that youth brings to D4. And may D4 reign supreme. May D4 eclipse even the heights of Dekkar. Amen.
Amen.
If you've ever seen that South Park episode called Baby's Boobs Destroy Society, this is a lot like that. Here, a cute Christian girl somehow ends up hanging out with a mostly aging group of guys, and the dynamic between all the characters completely changes. I think Wendy Kerby is generally a good inclusion just because it's something we haven't seen the characters deal with before. As part of Wendy's journey towards stardom, Tim has decided to help her out and let her sing a few songs at the Oscar special to shine some light on her.
I'm like an empty bottle, dreamed of everything left in my mind. Checking out life on the dark side, riding down the road to the end of time.
Even though Tim has tried to have a romantic relationship with almost every woman in the show's history, it's still left ambiguous whether or not Tim sees her as more of a daughter figure or another potential love interest. But Tim, don't you realize that the love of your life is sitting right next to you? I mean, this woman, she married you to help you escape your debt. She was your only ally in your campaign for district attorney. She helped you escape prison time.
There's nothing you do it if you have to do it. Okay,
oh
so there's
my God, Tim, you said you de-shelled it.
No, this.
Okay,
see,
we
that
need to.
is very dangerous. If we could have.
He could have just blown his head off.
Like in The Crow with Brandon Lee.
I'm not even going to put this back in the gun. That's how serious that is. So you can just throw that anywhere. But seriously,
just
really
put the gun
scary.
away, so we can talk about movies without fear.
Well, there's nothing in here.
Most importantly, it seems like you haven't been able to get her pregnant, which has been your kryptonite throughout the entire series. I mean, if there's anyone in the whole world you don't want to betray, it's that woman right there.
I'm like a broken lantern, stuffed of everything good and light. Hang around waiting for something to pick me up or hang me dry. Fill me up again. Fill me up again.
The song itself is hilarious and totally unexpected. She puts in a wonderfully earnest performance, seemingly oblivious to any of the other characters' motivations or feelings. She maintains that sunny, innocent disposition all the way to the end of the special, when things inevitably fall apart.
Someone answer me. Is he alive?
She truly is a star. I think I may just have to give this version an S as well, just because of what an unexpected treat it was and how it made a totally unknown character instantly likable. Next, we have the version of Empty Bottle played on Rock House. Rock House was a mock reality TV show where Axiom and Manuel were thrown into a house together with up-and-coming star Wendy Kerby. As a plot device, this rendition works well enough as a bonding exercise for the three of them, and although it feels like a very casual version of the song, I think their vocal harmonies sound excellent, better than any other rendition so far, and that goes a long way.
Hang around waiting for something to pick me up or hang me dry. Fill me up again.
Wow, Wendy Kerby is a star.
However, I have to say I'm very down on the fact that Rock House only existed for one episode. I know that it was canceled as part of an overarching plot for the main On Cinema review show, but I think treating this reality TV show concept as a joke was a mistake. See, after On Cinema parted ways with Adult Swim right on the eve of COVID, many people, including Tim and Gregg, thought that On Cinema was done for good. And to be fair, that 7th Oscar special would have been one of the most brilliant endings to a show of all time. Anyway, they pushed on and created their own website called The High Network, where they continue to make On Cinema seasons through a premium paywall. Rock House was created as another little piece of content to pad out the subscription offering. The thing is, even though Rock House was just a one-off joke, the High Network would have desperately benefited from something like this. The actual On Cinema show only runs for a few months out of the year. Then they have the Oscar special, and then there's this massive hiatus where almost nothing is posted for months, except for occasional bonus content here and there. Supporting them is great, and they deserve to be supported, but the concept of offering a yearly subscription feels misleading because it implies a consistent stream of content the whole year instead of a burst of seasonal content once a year. Fleshing out a concept like Rock House would have been a great way to make a yearly subscription feel less like a scam. More importantly than that, though, I think they're missing out on a huge opportunity to drip feed plot information through a different format. As I mentioned before, if you want to reveal something in this universe, you either do it through the main show or you do it through the Oscar special. Having another way to develop characters, especially in a way that doesn't involve Tim and Gregg's fictional characters, could have been a great way to flesh out the universe further. I can only hope they return to this concept, or one like it, in the future. Anyway, I like this rendition generally, but the sting of missed potential associated with Rockhouse puts this at a B for me. Next, we come to one of the most bizarre moments in the entire On Cinema saga, and that's saying something. The Wendy Kerby Valentine's Day special was dropped completely out of the blue as a surprise to everyone, and it contains some moments that are so baffling and cringy, I don't even know how to feel about them. Towards the end of the special, everyone is feeling completely drained and depressed. Manuel decides to start up some good old empty bottle. Now, so far, I haven't played any of these renditions all the way through, but I think the context is important here, so take a listen and see for yourself.
I'm like an empty bottle, dream of everything left in my mind. Shaking at that life on the dark side, riding down the road to the end of time. I'm like a broken lantern. We still got it.
Even though, as a song, this rendition is one of the weaker ones, it's easily an A for me. This scene perfectly encapsulates what this movie review series is all about. Broken people who lean on each other to make it another day. I mean, look at this crew. Larue, the hardened detective who relies on covert operations and infiltration, he's confined to a wheelchair, seemingly permanently, but hey, he's still snapping along. Joe Estevez in the back there, he keeps showing up to these things despite taking constant abuse from Tim, showing how washed up his career is. But he still tries to bring that classic Joe Estevez positivity. Moments ago, Manuel went through what was likely the most embarrassing moment of his life, but here he is pushing that aside to put in a good performance and lift his friend's spirits. I think Axiom steals the show here, though, and not for his singing. The primal pain Axiom exudes in this scene is some of the best raw acting he's done in the entire series. All these guys are parasites feeding off each other, particularly the Gregg and Tim dynamic.
I loved it, and I give it 5 bags of popcorn too, and I love you. I love you for being there.
I love that you put me in this position here in Victorville to run this theater, and we just finished the...
I want to tell you. I want to look me in the eyes. Mm-hmm. Look me in the eyes. I want to tell you something. Your heart's beating like crazy. Here, look at me. Look at me.
I looked at you plenty last week.
Come here. Look me in the eyes. Look me in the eyes. I want to tell you. I love you.
I mean, I'm glad to hear it, because what we're doing here in
Gregg needs Tim and his money because he needs a platform to share his movie expertise. And Tim needs Gregg because he wants to be the creator and owner of something successful, and Gregg's presence gives On Cinema a sense of legitimacy. The relationship between Axiom and Tim feels similar. Axiom wishes he could escape this life and move on from this toxic, insane group of people, but he literally cut off his hand and donated it to Tim and hasn't played guitar since 2017 because of it. But he's stuck with that choice now. He needs Tim because who else would hire a musician with no hand? And Tim needs Axiom because he wants to stand next to him and pretend he's as cool as him. Everyone in this room needs to stay together to survive, even if staying together means no longer growing as a person. And that's what's going on with Axiom here. Lamenting mistakes of the past, hoping things will improve, a cry of anguish, fatigue, and desperation. And a surprisingly wholesome ending for what was otherwise an extremely unhinged special. Next, I'll briefly touch on the 9th Oscar special performance, which is definitely the worst one. All they're doing is playing a backing recording of the classic Empty Bottle and then pretending to play over it and do some singing. They screw up the lyrics, they generally seem like they don't care, and that's it. Again, this one isn't meant to be good. It's the end of the night, the special is basically already over, and spirits are down due to certain events that transpired earlier. This isn't really even a performance, it's a sound cue to trigger a scripted event where the power gets cut. So I'm going to treat it as such, give it a D, and move on. Finally, we come to the 11th Oscar special, which premiered live in early 2024. This Oscar special in general is definitely the best one since before COVID, by far. First off, the setting of a business convention is a brilliant idea for an Oscar special. It allows the basic concept of having these wacky segments to feel much more organic, and opens up ideas for new segments that wouldn't normally be possible. Second, some of my favorite shots from previous Oscar specials are when they cut away to some random extra with a glazed expression on their face. I noticed in the specials during COVID times, many of those extras were absent, and it made the broadcast lose a lot of energy. With COVID finally being done, and the convention setting allowing for a small fake audience, moments like these can happen way more often. Lastly, I think all the new characters like the Amatos and Joey Patron are all great inclusions, and it's great to see them utilized so well here. So why play Empty Bottle during a business convention? Well, after some shocking dashcam footage came to light, Manuel and Axiom decided to kick Tim out of the band. Funnily enough, once Tim is out of their lives, they're able to put out a new song instantly, and the production quality on it is far beyond anything they ever did with Tim.
Yes, you always say the proudest we would be, but as far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me. I took a ride with the devil, you took me down to his level, but I'm rising up, and leaving all that behind.
Ride with the Devil is super catchy, and if this was a different tier list, I'd give it an S. I love the character of Corwin as well, touted as this infusion of talent, but in every scene he's like a deer in headlights. Axe and Manuel like the song too and want to perform the new song at the convention, but instead Tim challenges them to a battle of the bands to determine which band can do the best rendition of Empty Bottle. The idea being that whoever puts on the best performance deserves the name of Dekkar. The Italians go first and put out a humble acoustic performance.
I'm like an empty bottle, drain of everything left in my mind. Checking out life on the dark side, riding on the road till the end of time.
Then it's Tim's turn, and he's hired a full jam band he calls the Empty Bottle Players, turning the convention into a Fish concert.
I'm like a broken lantern, snuffed of everything good and light. Hang around, waiting for something to pick me up or to hang me dry. Come on.
Obviously, the joke here is that Axiom and Manuel can never win against Tim, because he can just buy a victory by hiring tons of talented musicians. The question is, how well does this joke land, and how good are these renditions actually? Personally, I think that in order for the joke to land, both performances should have been slightly better. Let's start with Axiom and Manuel's version. They have a decent performance, but they make a few mistakes that I don't think were intentional. For example, Axiom flubs a few lyrics here.
I'm like a broken lantern, after everything good and light, hanging out right on sunset, let me try, fill me up again.
You could view this as them not having had a chance to practice Empty Bottle because they were going to play Ride with the Devil, and that's why they made a few mistakes. But honestly, I don't buy it. I think real Axiom just made a flub, and this is a live show, so they went with it. The thing is, the joke about Tim buying his way to victory only works if Axiom and Manuel actually play well themselves. If they put out a below average performance, it makes it feel like Tim didn't even need all those extra musicians, when in reality, he absolutely does. I'm not expecting the Italians to put out gold, but if the performance had just been slightly better and it felt like they had a real chance, it would have made the reveal of the Empty Bottle players better because you realize, oh wait, Tim is just going to cheat. Instead, we go into Tim's turn pretty sure that no matter what happens, Dekkar is going to lose. However, the Empty Bottle players then go on to also make a few unintended mistakes. There's a part here where the backup singer comes in a bit too early. And then there's a way more egregious bit here where the band skips an entire measure of music by accident. You can tell it's a real mistake because Tim breaks character and turns to look at them like, whoa. Thankfully, they're all pros and pick everything up on time again, but it still feels like a genuinely unintended mistake from a live performance. So as a viewer, instead of laughing at Tim's complete overkill, buy your way to victory strategy, you're thinking, man, if only Dekkar had tried a little harder, they could have actually had a chance to win. Overall, I loved the concept of this battle of the bands, and it gives Tim a chance to cross another Empty Bottle music genre cover off the list. I also love the way that Tim gradually gets sidelined by his own band he hired, further highlighting that he has nothing to do with this win, and he just cheated his way to a victory. I just wish the whole thing had been executed a little better, but it was still really fun to see it all play out. I think I'll give the Dekkar performance a C, because they really should have done better, and I'll give the Empty Bottle players an A, because it's a really fun version of the song and well composed, but it should have been the definitive, perfect version of the song, and it isn't. I've been trying to be vague about certain spoilers and moments because I love On Cinema, and if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. If you don't want to wade through years and years of history to appreciate it, I think you could probably start from season 5 or 6 and understand enough to enjoy the rest. On Cinema is just one of those projects that somehow never runs out of ideas and gets better as time goes on, similar to a show like Kerb.
If you don't have the vision, I don't.
You know, right after the trial, they did the 5th On Cinema Oscar special, and the theme of the special was celebrating the 40th anniversary of Jaws 2, which is a completely obscure yet totally perfect theme for On Cinema to use. However, I don't believe Jaws 2 was chosen arbitrarily. I think real-life Tim and Gregg were signaling to the viewers that they felt they had jumped the shark after the trial. The major plot threads had ended, and the show was all downhill from here. But I'm here to say that is absolutely not the case. On Cinema is a fantastic project that has maintained the same high level of quality far past that point, and even through impossibly tough times like COVID and parting ways with Adult Swim. I highly recommend you check it out. And if you already know On Cinema and enjoy it, you might enjoy my tier list advent calendar project, which was a lot of fun to make and really made me appreciate the type of work Tim and Gregg put in. If you're interested in helping me pay my rent, my Patreon community has been growing slowly and steadily, and we'd love to have you there. Until then, I've got a ton more videos planned, and I'm excited to get into it. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.